It's absolutely lovely to be here with you all. Today, I'll actually be speaking about slightly non-technical, but why we need to be doing things. Uh, what is the legal framework primarily which exists? And we are talking about universal design, where we are saying that the assistive technology and the technology innovations or the technologies being developed for persons with disabilities are no longer only for persons with disabilities. Why everything that we are creating needs to be accessible to everyone. So it's not creating some things only and specially for persons with disabilities, but what is being designed for everybody, for mainstream, not for persons with disabilities. Why that need to be now uh, also take into consideration that it has to be for everybody. It has to be for all. And this whole thought process has evolved. I mean, there is a whole ecosystem of legal provisioning, which has this thought process has traveled from the international convention to the national bodies, and how it has actually happened in India. What is the framework under which we need to operate uh, in this accessibility environment is just the glimpse that I just wanted to actually present, because a lot has gone in, a lot of efforts have gone in to create this kind of an ecosystem here for us. So we, the first thing, of course, the international convention, the United Nations Conventions for Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD, that came way back in 2006. Um, then in India, we took good amount of time in making our own Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act that came in 2016, which is compliant to the UNCRPD. So India ratified the UN Convention, and which meant that we are going to harmonize our own laws to the UN Convention, and we obviously harmonized our uh, law, which protects the rights of persons with disabilities, and made it sort of compatible with UNCRPD, and that came in 2016. Then the next thing that comes in this whole thing is that there are some associated rules that define how the provisions of that act are going to be implemented. And then within those rules, especially when it comes to technology and things, you need to define, when you say that, okay, things need to be made accessible, you need to define what is accessibility. If we say that things have to be compliance to universal design, then we need to define what do we mean by universal design for people to understand and people to follow and people to comply with. So what are the rules that need to be specific rules that you actually adhere to, so that you are able to qualify as an accessible product or a universal design product? What would qualify for a product to be called as universal design or an accessible thing? So you need to define those rules pretty well, and that is what comes in form of standards. So there are standards then which will allow these rules and this act and finally the UNCRPD to be implemented and implementable in the country. So UNCRPD, for example, this is one example we can take up. UNCRPD defines universal design, and it says that it has to be something which is usable by all, maybe by itself, or at least allow it to be used with the help of assistive technology. So if I create Microsoft Office, it may have read aloud feature, but what most importantly it does is that it allows Microsoft Word to be used with the help of a screen reading software by a person with blindness, or using a refreshable braille display, whatever is written in Microsoft Word, even a person with deaf blindness will be able to operate Microsoft Word with the help of their um, you know, braille note taker. So that is what universal design really is. That it's the same piece of software being used by everybody, and it is usable on its own, or it allows assistive, the software being able to use with the help of assistive technology. And the same definition then got adopted in the Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 in India, which meant that now that same UNCRPD rules are now fully acknowledged and implemented in India as a country. So it also highlights that, okay, in clause 42 in this thing where it says that all the electronic equipment needs to be compliant with universal design principles, which means that whether we are creating televisions or microwaves or washing machines or this, that, all electronic equipment uh, must adhere to universal design principles. Now that's the law which it's a legal provision specifically mentioned in India that those universal design things, whatever electronic things that are normal day-to-day use things which are being created, must be made compliant to universal design, and in a way be made usable by all. I move to the next slide. So there are few provisions which I put on slide. I'm not obviously going to read through the whole thing, but the gist of it is that we are very clear in our Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act that whether it is content or devices or electronic media, all those things, the accessibility provisions actually apply to all those things, and not just the um, built environment that we have been traditionally been thinking about. And there are various clauses which actually cover all these issues. Um, and then we go on to say that how do we then define. Then there are the next step, as I said, are the rules that come here. And these rules again are very clear in its definition that there will be, in fact, going back to the Act, it says that the Commissioner Disabilities and the related government department will set out rules on how this will be implemented. And once the rules are notified, within 2 years, the country will have to comply. So there is a 2-year time period given specifically under this law, saying that you have to comply with these rules set out. Once they are notified, within 2 years, you will have to comply with all of them to make your products, make your things accessible. Um, what has happened is that after these rules were notified way back in 2017, it clearly said that we will also come up with standards on ICT accessibility. That unfortunately has taken a huge amount of time. And finally, in 2022, January and December 21 and April 2022, um, we actually have the Bureau of Indian Standards have issued the you can say IS 17802 standards that now clearly defines um, what really defines what is ICT accessibility. So I'll come to that a little later, that what actually it covers. But before that, what is more important is there is very frequently asked question, so to say, whether these rules, these laws, like you have to make your website accessible, software accessible, etc. All those things have to be made accessible. Whether these things actually apply just to the government establishments or to the private industry. So for that, again, the law and our rules are extremely clear, because our RPWD Act again very clearly says that these standards and these rules, accessibility clauses, will apply to both government, to all establishments, whether they're government or private. And they further go to define, there are definitions within the law itself that defines what a private establishment is, what an establishment is. It is government and private both. Secondly, within private also, whether it's a private company or an NGO or whatever, they are all covered under this definition of establishments, which means that clearly, without any doubt, all these standards, these rules apply to as much to the government departments as to the private industries and the NGOs or civil societies or anybody. So if anybody is creating their website, they have to be compliant, and they have to be compliant within a specific time period. This is what our legal position in this country is. And now coming to the standards, why it is we know that these standards are very important to know, and that is why I'm actually speaking about it, that this is something that has just come across in, as I said, few months ago. These have been notified, the IS 17802. This has been issued, and as a first version, what we did was that we tried to make it, instead of defining the whole standard, that would have taken many, many years, because creating a standard is a long process. So we said that let's do something that is, let's identify which is the most comprehensive standards in this domain in the world. And we found that, okay, the European standard EN 459, sorry, has a very good base of definitions of how do we define accessibility. What exactly should be done to make things accessible. So the very clear definitions there. So the first thing, as a first step, the committees, what has done is that it has adopted the EN standard, the European standard. It said that let us change only what needs to be changed, minimal changes that can be done, because we have specific issues related to our own language. We have issues to related to what is the current situation in the country, how much things can be done, not be done, etc. Few reviews of that has been done. And the second very big reason to make it compliant again with the international standard was that it would then be so much easier, because there is a whole validation mechanism that is put in place to implement these standards all across the world. If we make it very, very different to the international standard, and if there is a company that wants to make its product available in various regions, like it has to make its product available in Europe, in US, in India, how many standards will it validate against? So if these standards are harmonized with each other, it makes it easier for the industry to implement it all across the world. So that was another very big issue which was playing in the minds, that let us keep it as close to the international standard as possible, so that the implementation is easier. And these standards again has the first part, which was notified in December, is titled the requirements, and it covers the whole gamut, whether it's computers, smartphones, etc. All these information technology related things, hardware, software, whether you're creating a software, and it's not just about websites, but of course websites are included, and also the telecommunications, the televisions, the set-top boxes, etc. All those articles are actually covered under these standards, how to make them actually accessible. And the second part was published in April, and this says a determination of conformance, means how do you then test procedures and validation processes on how would you ensure what kind of self certification, self validations, etc. that you can do to claim that yes, you are now compliant with the standards. All those rules are now notified in India. Uh, it is for this. Why I'm bringing this is that this is something that we can't anymore say that we didn't know that these things existed to, because this is part of the law. Ignorance doesn't absolve us from uh, being compliance, being compliant, and that is why it is important to know that this legal structure, these standards are in place. There was a time frame within which we have to sort of make sure that we do adhere to these standards and go forward. This is just a legal framework thing to tell that yes, it is mandatory to do all this, but yes, I think the bigger reason for doing it is that it is always the better thing to do. It is the much better way of doing things, that whatever we design for the whole of the world, that needs to be usable by all and adhere to universal design principles. Um, uh, we definitely cannot create two worlds. We cannot recreate a world, whatever we are creating. We cannot recreate, replicate the whole infrastructure that is being created. Most of the things just get created once. Um, and that is, so if the examples are that we are not going to, first of all, create this wonderful infrastructure like this innovation park, and then after creating it, obviously if we try to make it usable by persons with disabilities, that won't happen. So it is created just once, and it's best to create it with following the universal design principles. That's the whole logic. But yes, now it is also fully legal obligation that we do with that. Thank you so much.